Welcome to ACD Combatives, your combatives and control tactics channel. Please like, subscribe, and share. Guys, Coach Kurt, this one's about a 20-minute video. I apologize for that, but we're talking about the difference between Taiho-Jutsu and modern control tactics, specifically modern Taiho-Jutsu, not classical styles like what you would see in 1940s Japan or even in Japan today. We're talking modern Taiho-Jutsu as it's influenced here in the West, United States, United Kingdom, that kind of stuff. It's pretty much what I practice because I have to. If you don't have a distance management and clinch range in your system, then you definitely need to add that stuff. What do I mean by distance management? If you control the distance, you control the fight. We're talking entering the striking range into the clinch range for the takedown. You have to be excessively comfortable at making that entrance, controlling the distance, and when you're in the clinch range, you have to be very proficient in the clinch range, and not just clinch like you would see in jiu-jitsu or wrestling, but clinch the way you would see it practiced in MMA with strikes, kind of like what we're doing on screen right now. Some basic strikes. It doesn't have to be anything crazy, but what you see on screen right now is what I call clinch sparring. It's okay and good to break up your sparring practice, at your kickboxing range, your clinch range, and your ground range. And then you should do like MMA sparring occasionally as well, where you're flowing it all together. But you definitely have to have good distance management and good clinch range capability. Now, joint locks and joint manipulation, really important in modern Taiho-Jutsu or even a control tactics program. There is a difference. Control tactics is basically a very abbreviated version of Taiho-Jutsu, which is a full martial arts system. I couldn't tell you how many times I've used basic joint locks that I learned in Hapkido, Taiho-Jutsu, Aikido, classical jiu-jitsu. These are all, a rose by another name is still a rose. I've used this stuff so many times over the years and very effectively. It's a great way to get compliance against somebody who's not all out trying to kick your butt. Somebody who's maybe doing some minor resistance, or you need to get them to let go of something or to get them to comply because they're drunk. You come up with a scenario and I come up with an answer of why it's really important. It's also important to practice the stuff later on as you get good at it when you're drilling it, and then start working it against a more resistive partner. I've pulled off Sankyo in jiu-jitsu doing a roll where somebody was trying to get rear naked choke on me, and I was able to get the Sankyo on them. So it can be done. Throws and takedowns. Well, you absolutely have to have good throws and good takedowns in any Taiho-Jutsu program, and that's where it excels past control tactics. A lot of control tactics program don't have a lot of takedowns and throws, where a full-fledged martial arts system like Taiho-Jutsu definitely would. Modern Taiho-Jutsu, you're going to make some adjustments because it's got to be court-proof. You're not trying to destroy somebody like, a big Seo Nage and dropping them on their head. You're doing what I call soft throws or takedowns, something you can control that are ethical. You can juice it up if you have to, but you should be able to control the juice that you're putting on the throw, if I'm making my point. So you should have a good combination of gi and no-gi style throws. You're seeing very hapki, aiki, Taiho-Jutsu style takedowns on the screen right now, but you should also have some, your classical, something similar to judo or classic jiu-jitsu type throws. These things are all important. This is a foot stomp takedown that you just step on the foot and you off balance. That goes into Kazushi, off balancing. You definitely have to be capable and working against a resistant opponent and learning how to off balance. And the only way to do that is drill, and then roll. You need to work against somebody who is a active resisting opponent. And as you see, we're wearing gis now on screen. This goes into, you should be pretty proficient in modern Taiho-Jutsu. Classic Taiho-Jutsu, you're always wearing a gi. In modern martial arts, you should be proficient at both, because the world is seasonal. I know it's very seasonal where I work. During the summer, I could be going against somebody in t-shirt, shorts, and flip-flops. And during the winter, fleece, ski jacket. You get the idea. So you need to be proficient at both. And people say one is better than the other. No, it's 50-50. You should be working out with the gi and no gi scenarios. And if you're in law enforcement, and most people that I train with civilians do train Taiho-Jutsu. There's organizations where you have civilians that are training Taiho-Jutsu, but you should also train with your duty belt on a regular basis and your outer vest. Self-defense. What do I mean by self-defense? We're talking your weapons defense, headlock defense, guillotine. These are common self-defense scenarios that don't definitely you don't really get in control tactics per se, unless you're talking, defending your weapon. Somebody's trying to unholster your weapon or something. But you should have some basic knife defense, pistol disarming, weapon retention, definitely. If you're in law enforcement, you carry a gun for a living, weapon retention should be a huge part of your Taiho-Jutsu and your control tactics program. Again, I look at control tactics and think of it as an abbreviated, quick, fast, in a hurry variation of your Taiho-Jutsu. And again, firearms defense, using it and disarming and keeping your gun safe, the whole gamut. Again, self-defense is really important. An arrest can go bad where you're no longer trying to arrest a person, you're fighting for your life, or you're attacked. And yes, self-defense is important in law enforcement. You have a right to defend yourself just like Joe Citizen. And those techniques can be different from your standard control tactic style techniques. Sometimes you're going to have to juice it up because more force now equals less force later, especially in a self-defense scenario. We're talking about objectively reasonable force here. That's what I'm always talking about. And you decide what that is based on your training and experience. But yes, self-defense is definitely an important part of any martial art program. Like you could be doing sport taekwondo, but you should still do some self-defense training on the side. Because you never know when you're getting the schoolyard bully headlocks, or in this case on screen you see the guillotine. These are common attacks that untrained but athletic, strong people can use against you. And if you don't know how to defend against a guillotine or a headlock or a bear hug, and these typical, what I call old school schoolyard attacks, that you could be lost in the scenario. And you see on screen right now where I'm wearing the vest. That's definitely important. As a police officer, somebody grabs on your vest, or mic cord, they could try to wrap that around your neck. You need to learn how to defend yourself against common grabs. These are really big in Hapkido, classic Jiu-Jitsu, Taiho-Jutsu, Aikido. The list goes on. Like I said, a rose by another name is still a rose. And you see a lot of this type of stuff in a lot of martial arts. But I think it's super important to stick to self-defense and not just the sports side. Now, strikes. Yes, Taiho-Jutsu should have strikes, and your control tactics should have strikes. Here I am demonstrating the lead leg front kick, one of my favorite kicks for distance management. You can use that to enter a clinch, to escape the clinch. Somebody's moving in on me, I could click and go to my bat belt. Defending against common strikes, there's the roundhouse punch, super common strike, the A-frame kick, takedown, very Krav looking right there. Definitely some Krav influence. Your clinch, striking into the clinch and out of the clinch and just being able to strike is super important. That might be a big difference between Taiho-Jutsu and maybe some other martial arts. Yes, you should be practicing striking, but it's not like you're going to be going in a 12-round boxing match. You don't have to be that level of striker, but you should definitely be proficient, especially, exiting the clinch or entering the clinch and using it for distance management. And here you see the Muay Thai influence. I'm not a Muay Thai fighter. I'm not a kickboxer, but I definitely have some influence, train with people that train the system. You should be a proficient kicker. You should be a proficient puncher. Elbows, knees. Again, more force now equals less force later. And that goes into the whole concept of tactics as well, and we'll get into that later. But if you're not a halfway decent striker, then you need to work on your strikes. And not just heavy bag work. Some sparring is good. There are systems that are like, well, we don't spar because it's too sport. That's fine. Muay Thai, kickboxing style sparring is great. It definitely helps with footwork and distance management. If you don't spar or practice distance management other than just hitting a bag, you're losing out. A bag is a great way to train, but you should definitely be sparring with people whenever you can. And here I am practicing knee strikes and proper what we call the a Thai-style neck plum position. And again, kicking into the clinch range. I'm practicing that a lot. I love to incorporate striking into clinch range. This is Dutch-style mitt work, where this is my Coach Colton at my old duty station. I don't train with him anymore. I wish I did. He was a great coach. He's wearing boxing gloves instead of focus mitts, and then he would call out a pattern and I would throw the pattern, and then the X factor. He would throw something, and I would have to defend against it that wasn't called out, or I would have to anticipate and throw a kick or a punch or something that isn't part of the pattern. And here I'm training with another law enforcement officer. That's Coach Amanda. She's a control tactics instructor, but she's a Muay Thai coach and a boxing coach. And I needed help with working pads, holding pads, because I'm not really experienced to that kind of stuff, because I come from a more traditional martial arts background. So I was like, hey, could you show me how to hold pads? And that's basically what we were doing, where she was teaching me the patterns and that are commonly used in boxing and kickboxing, and helping me work pads. Guys, if you don't have the knowledge, find somebody who does, and don't be afraid to ask. There are a lot of talented people out there, and you need to reach out and ask for help if you need help in a particular arena, because you can't be an expert at all at everything. In fact, I consider myself a jack of all trades, master of none. Unfortunately, I wish I was a master of it all, but I can't. And then here, finally, well, definitely not finally, there's other things. You got to have a ground game. Guys, there's no such thing as anti-grappling. It's the only way to keep off the ground, and yes, you shouldn't go to the ground on purpose if you can avoid it. Now, if you're handcuffing somebody and they're fighting and resisting, a lot of times it ends up going to the ground. But in a street fight, especially in a civilian scenario, you don't want to go to the ground. But the only way to get back off your feet, and I use Conor McGregor as an example, he's a jiu-jitsu black belt, but his game was striking. So he was really good at, doing a technical get-up, hip bump sweeps, and sweeping people just so he could get the top position and he could stand up. He didn't linger on the ground. He had the skills. He's a jiu-jitsu black belt, but he knew that he wanted to win the game in his arena, which means striking. Same in self-defense. If you want to get up off the ground, then you need to know how to grapple. And I've been to schools that say, well, we train so we don't have to go to the ground, or we train in how to avoid going to the ground. Life is a bitch. Fights decide sometimes for you when you're going to go to the ground. You trip on something. You zig when you should have zagged, and you get clipped and you go down. You are on the ground. You have to know how to grapple. I'm not saying you have to be a jiu-jitsu master, but you should be at least at a solid blue belt level in Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and have that level of confidence. A blue belt, we're talking a good solid 2 years of jiu-jitsu training. You should be confident on the ground. Again, you don't have to be a master, but especially how to get out of the bottom position. Your sweeps, fighting from guard is great, but in a self-defense scenario, you don't want to be on the bottom. Even though the guard is a very effective way to fight, you want to be able to defend yourself long enough so you can sweep somebody, do a technical get-up, and stand up. Now, if you're down and you get to top position and you're a police officer and you need to handcuff, well, then you're safe, and it's safe to stay down, then stay down and work the handcuff. But, of course, another thing I see is position before submission or position before handcuffing. People who don't train grappling panic and they freak out and they try to go for the techniques too fast, and then you lose your position. Now, firearms. That's obviously a part of Taiho-Jutsu. It's not a part of control tactics. That would be firearms instructors. But in Taiho-Jutsu, you should be proficient with all weapons of modern law enforcement. You know, back in the day, they used swords and stuff like that, and nunchaka and what have you. Well, in modern police work, you use firearms. And you saw that I was training with the SIRT pistol. That's a laser pistol. That's basically dry fire training. Guys, you don't have to put a million rounds down range to be proficient. Dry fire can be a great way to get a lot of reps in and then do a little range time to clean it up. And find good instructors, good people. Then they don't have to be a certified instructor. Just because somebody is a certified instructor doesn't mean they're the best firearms guru in the land. There are good firearms people out there that aren't necessarily certified. But find somebody who's qualified and have them teach you firearms if you don't know firearms. And we're talking the tactics that go along with it. Shoot, move, communicate, that kind of stuff. Now here we're talking baton. Now, depending on your jurisdiction, most modern police in America anyway use a straight baton, collapsible baton. The PR-24, I used that back in the day. It was one of the first things I was ever issued back in the day. That has fallen out of favor. But if your department still uses it or people in your area still use it, then you should be proficient in that as well. Taser, obviously. Now, there are still some departments that don't use Taser, but I'd say at least 90% of American police anyway use Taser. They're more than just pulling the trigger and shooting the cartridges. You need to be able to transition between these tools. That's huge. Transitioning between your pepper spray, where you see on screen right now, your OC, your pepper spray, transitioning to striking, baton, taser, transition drills is huge with these secondary defensive tools. Transitioning from firearm to taser, what have you. All these things, that's lacking in a lot of control tactics programs. And if you train Taiho-Jutsu as a modern martial art, then you should be transitioning drills as well. Now, handcuffing, you can't have Taiho-Jutsu or control tactics without handcuffing. And here you see cooperative handcuffing. I'm not going to go into long details on different styles of handcuffing. You do you. You see different departments in different parts of the nation doing different types of handcuffing techniques. But cooperative handcuffing is great, and you should definitely train it because putting the cuffs on can get ugly. Somebody starts throwing elbows. But also against a resisting opponent. Here I'm showing a handcuffing technique from Mount. I did some what I call the V8 strikes, your little strikes to the face, just powerful enough to distract. They're not meant to knock people out. They're little palm strikes, so they'll put their hands up to defend. I go down for an Americana, and then I'm going for that shoulder roll or putting the shoulder up on my leg, and I'm turning it into a handcuffing technique. I've actually pulled this off in a jiu-jitsu roll where I had somebody in Mount, and I was able to do this, which surprised me against, it was a white belt, so it wasn't like anybody too crazy, but it works, guys. This can work. Here it is again from a different angle, doing a classic Americana. Now, you don't have to do the Americana to do this technique, but it's a great way to get control of somebody, talk to them, calm them down, get the fight out of them, get them out of their lizard brain, and then going into handcuffing position. Again, position before submission. Hold that position as long as you need to hold it or you can safely hold it. Talk to them. Here is a Kimura variation where I went from knee on belly and then going to a Kimura. This is a really good handcuffing technique. If you do jiu-jitsu, you know the Kimura, and it's just a great way to get to handcuffing. There's also handcuffing from straight armbar. I don't demonstrate that. There's a lot of things I don't demonstrate in this video because there's just too many techniques in every range. Your clinch range, your striking range, your grappling, ground fighting range. There's just too much. This is just a flavor of the kind of things I'm talking about. But handcuffing is super important. Now, it's important if you're a Taiho-Jutsu instructor or definitely control tactics instructor, teaching tactics, officer survival tactics, shoot, move, communicate, 360 security, your color, being in condition yellow when you're on patrol. And here we are on screen right there is exactly what I'm talking about. Mental awareness. These tactics are super important. And to some degree, you definitely need to teach case law, what you can legally do and not legally do. Guys, it's super important in law enforcement to be super skookum on your case law. Having knowledge in case law is going to keep you out of trouble. And that is the entire use of force, at least as my department looks at it. We use Graham v. Connor. It is objectively reasonable force, blah, blah, blah. I've done lots of videos on it. All right, guys, like, subscribe, and share. Everybody take care.
Let's roll. Hey, let's be careful out.